For most of this season, the story of Formula One 2025 seemed already written. McLaren were untouchable, fast, flawless, and fearless. Oscar Piastri looked destined to claim his first world title, while Lando Norris stood as his greatest rival, not Max Verstappen. The reigning four-time champion had spent months on the defensive, fighting a car that just didn't feel like the Red Bull of old. By the end of summer, Verstappen was over 100 points behind. The championship, many said, was gone. But then something changed. A new flaw, a new front wing, and a new fire in Verstappen's eyes. Since Monza, he's been on an unstoppable charge, clawing back 64 points in just 4 races, dominating every track and silencing those who said the Red Bull era was over. Austin, however, wasn't just another win. It was a statement. Verstappen didn't just beat McLaren, he broke their momentum. And yet, just as Red Bull starts to dream again, the FIA has opened a new investigation that could throw everything into chaos. If you want to understand how this twist could rewrite the championship and maybe F1 history, make sure you're subscribed because this story is far from over. When the 2025 season began, hardly anyone imagined we'd see this moment again. Max Verstappen standing on top of the podium in Austin, not just as a race winner, but as a revived title contender. The Dutchman's victory in the United States Grand Prix wasn't just another statistic in his career, it was a declaration that the king has returned. For months, McLaren had owned Formula One, their cars perfect through every phase of the season, their drivers unstoppable. But now, as the championship enters its final stretch, the balance of power has shifted. For the first half of the year, Red Bull looked lost. The RB21 was fast in bursts, but unpredictable over a race distance. Verstappen couldn't extract what he needed from the chassis, and frustration built race after race. McLaren's young duo Piastri and Norris capitalised ruthlessly. Between them, they had turned Formula One into a 2-horse race, with Verstappen trailing over 100 points behind after Zandvoort. The message was clear. The Verstappen dynasty was over, but Red Bull's silence in those months wasn't a sign of defeat. Behind the scenes, their technical department was working on a complete aerodynamic rethink. In Italy, they unleashed it, a new floor and front wing that transformed the car's balance. Suddenly, Verstappen could feel the car again, the front end biting sharply, the rear stable enough to trust under braking. That upgrade was the turning point. Since Monza, the reigning champion has been on a mission. 4 races later, the numbers are staggering. Verstappen has clawed back 64 points in just 6 weeks. A gap that once looked impossible now seems tantalisingly close. He sits only 40 points behind Oscar Piastri, and the margin between the 2 McLaren drivers has shrunk to just 14. Lando Norris has outscored his teammate consistently, while Piastri's once unshakable composure is beginning to crack. The fight for the title has become a 3-way psychological war, and Verstappen, the man who thrives under chaos, has found his rhythm right when it matters most. The Austin weekend was the clearest evidence of that shift. Verstappen dominated qualifying, crushed the sprint, and executed the main race with surgical precision. His pace wasn't just strong, it was relentless. McLaren's only real hope came from Lando Norris, who looked capable of matching Verstappen's speed when in clean air. But his race was undone at turn 1 when Charles Leclerc's Ferrari jumped him off the line using soft tyres. From that moment, Norris was trapped in a tactical nightmare, stuck behind Leclerc for most of the race, overheating tyres and losing valuable seconds that would never be recovered. By the time he finally cleared the Ferrari, Verstappen was already gone. And yet, despite their setback, McLaren walked away from Austin with mixed emotions. Andrea Stella, calm as ever, told the media he was reassured by the car's performance, insisting that Norris had the pace to win. But beneath the calm tone was the unmistakable sense of worry. Because while McLaren still had speed, they no longer had control. The psychological momentum had shifted. Verstappen was back in their mirrors and closing fast. Piastri, meanwhile, endured one of his toughest weekends of the year. The Australian never looked comfortable, always a couple of tenths behind Norris. He dismissed the idea that pressure was affecting him, claiming it was just one of those weekends where the pace isn't there. But anyone watching could sense it, the subtle cracks forming under the weight of expectation. McLaren's drivers are now learning what Verstappen has lived through for years. Fighting for a world title is not about speed alone. It's about surviving pressure, managing mistakes, and staying mentally unbreakable when the world starts to close in. And just when Red Bull seemed